Word of our community's acclaim spreads.
And we are live. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Joy of Pixels podcast. I am Hal451, and I'm joined, as always, with my buddy Squash. Squash, how are you doing today?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Cool, glad to have you here. Hi, Vermalt. I am super excited to welcome the one, the only, the TheAkosombo. Welcome in, Ako. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I'm already blushing a little bit, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. I feel like I guess, kind of quote, met, I guess, about a year ago. I think when you were playing, was it Mass Effect that you were going through?
I think so. That might be it. Yeah. I think. Yeah, I think Mass Effect 2 a year ago, roughly.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Was
I think.
that was
I played Mass Effect 2 at the beginning of last year.
Yeah. Was that your first time going through Mass Effect, the series?
No. I
Oh,
played
okay.
through it when it came out, but I just wanted to play through it again. One of my favorite series, and I played through it multiple times actually on PS3, but then has been a few years and needed to take care of that itch.
Man, Mass Effect is so good. I don't know why, but I've been thinking about Mass Effect a lot lately.
Yeah, it's just one of those games that at least I played it over and over again, and it's just always so much fun, and you always discover little bits of dialogue that you haven't, and it just makes me happy then. And I definitely want to play through Andromeda again because I never finished it, but I didn't think that it was as bad as a lot of people thought it was. I had a good time with it, and I definitely want to finish it at some point.
I think I'm the same.
Yeah, same for me. I still haven't finished it. I played through probably, I don't know, 20 hours of it or so, and honestly enjoyed quite a bit of it. But then the news started coming out that they had canceled the planned DLC, and they weren't going to be supporting it anymore. And I was like, man, that really sucks. So I just never went back.
Yeah,
But
I think I played a little bit. Like I got pretty far into the game. I think I might have
mm,
been like 3/4 through it, but then it was just one of those cases where I wasn't able to play for some reason for a couple of weeks. Then it's always hard to get back into a game like that when you have no idea where you left off and what the last quests were, and like you kind of lose the connection to everything around you. So I think I just need to start over again.
I struggle with that so much because I feel like most gamers struggle with that. When you play a lot of games, and especially when there's a lot of games coming out, that I'll start a game, get really invested into it, and then like a new game will come out or something, and so I'll switch over to that game, and then you try to go back to the game that you were playing, and you're like, I don't know what is happening. I don't remember how to play. I don't remember the controls. I don't remember the story. It's so hard to go back.
Yeah, especially with games where it's so important to have some kind of connection to the story and characters. Like you want to be invested, and it's just hard to get that back when it would take a couple of hours to really get back into the groove, and oftentimes you then don't feel like doing that.
Vermont says the trick is to neglect life and just play Mass Effect. There you go. Well, thank you again, Akko, for joining us. I'm super excited to have you on, and we're just going to jump into the games we've been playing. So, Akko, would you like to go
Maybe
first?
Squash can start. Oh.
I'll start with the fact I've not played anything in the past 2 weeks. How about that? I've been making my own game, in fact.
Oh, well, that's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, just in college working on a project, but it's pretty exciting times.
That's still exciting.
Yeah.
What kind of game is it? I haven't really heard much about this.
So our current project, our theme is Japan, basically. And so it also has to be an arcade game. So you have to think you're only playing it with a joystick and 2 buttons. So you have to keep it pretty simple. So I'm making basically like an infinite jumper. So similar to like an infinite runner, like Temple Run or an infinitely running side-scrolling game. You're infinitely jumping as like high as you can go. And the twist is to fit into the Japanese theme, you kind of are in feudal Japan for like a couple minutes while you're jumping. Then you go through a portal and the environment changes to kind of a futuristic type Japan style. That's kind of the idea that I have anyway. I've not implemented it yet, but I've got all the assets made. But yeah, I'm kind of just, my deadline is in 2 weeks from now. So I've got a bit more time to get stuff done. But yeah.
What engine are you making this in?
We're working in Unreal Engine 4 at the moment. We started off the course in Unity, and then we moved to Unreal, and I made a horror game then, and then now I'm making this basically like platforming game.
That's really cool.
It is. I'm enjoying it a
sounds
lot.
good.
Well, let's see. Akko, what have you been playing?
I've actually been playing quite a few different things recently. So I recently finished Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I think that was the big one, which took me longer than I wanted to because I had some internet issues. Then I couldn't continue, and so the experience was longer than I expected. But finally finished it on the weekend. Also played Uncharted: Drake's Fortune, the first one.
Mhm.
Never played through it, and also played through The Darkest of Times, which is a game that just came out on Thursday, and it's a historical resistance strategy game. Is it? Well, it's very fun. Like it's playing in during Nazi Germany, and like you are this resistance cell leader and have to build up your resistance. But it's also combined with historical accurate events and facts, which makes it very unique. And on top of
Mhm.
that, also has a fun art style.
I had never heard of this game before. So it just came out though, right?
Yes, it came out on Thursday, and it's just a game that I think is developed in Germany and also got funded by some kind of media government agency. And yeah, it just came around to playing it, and it's a fun game if you like a very heavy and dark subject, but they handle the that kind of difficult topic very very well, and in a way where it's not trivializing the actual real world events, but instead really putting to the forefront what kind of difficulties and dangers were happening at that time.
Right.
Yeah. Man, it's pretty cool that we can have games like this. I feel like not that long ago, they probably wouldn't have been able to have this kind of a game in Germany, right?
Yeah, maybe. I think generally speaking, in terms of the media awareness of that time in Germany, there is a large presence to work through it and to have a lot of educational products. But I think with video games becoming more and more mainstream around the world, you now have the opportunity where you have a really good game that is also educational but brings some good gameplay elements with it.
Cool. Let's see. I want to talk a little bit about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So you finished it, right?
Yes, finishes I think
Um,
last Sunday.
Squash, I think you finished it, right?
Yeah, I finished it in like the first 3 or 4 days it was out. I kind of rushed through it.
And I finished it. So overall, what did everyone think about it? What are your thoughts?
um, I mean, I thought it was an okay, well, not okay. It was a pretty damn good Star Wars game. Um, I was just kind of confused as to where they were trying to take the game because it felt like it was kind of split down the middle of like on the verge of being a Dark Souls like, and then also kind of like a Tomb Raider / Uncharted type game. And it never really felt like they found their place. They were always like teetering on the edge of either thing.
It was a lot of different games mashed together, right?
Yeah, I think it definitely felt that way at times.
Uh,
Yeah,
Go ahead, Akko. What did you think about it?
uh, I can definitely see that. I had a great time with it. I definitely think it's for sure one of the stronger Star Wars games, and
Hmm.
for me, also one of the stronger action adventure type games. And for me, the comparison to obviously Dark Souls and then Tomb Raider Uncharted was the one that came to my mind first as well. But then someone pointed out that it's also very close to the recent God of War. And I feel like that is even closer because that also has a more intricate fighting style or fighting mechanic than the older God of Wars, but then has like these segmented maps that you can explore with different abilities that you then can use in a Metroidvania type style. So I feel like it's actually very close to the recent God of War, and I thought the main story was fine. I thought it was good. The characters were interesting. I thought overall I was pretty happy with it. I don't have too many things to complain, especially considering that I would imagine that working on such a project, the restraints for a developer team are a little bit heavier than for any other type of game.
Yeah, that's a pretty big IP to take on. Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. That's interesting to compare it to God of War. I hadn't really even thought about that, but it is very similar in a lot of ways, especially with the Metroidvania aspect to it. I felt, to me, I felt like I loved it. Honestly, I really enjoyed the game, but at the same time, it just felt a little weird to me that enemies respawn. Even though I'm a huge Dark Souls fan, like that is one of my favorite genres. It made no sense in like the lore that the people were just respawning, and it just felt very video gamey, I guess. Like all of the Metroidvania level design felt very much designed to be a Metroidvania. So I don't know if it really was better or worse for being that, but I think it's definitely the best Star Wars game that we've had in a very long time.
I would agree with that. Yeah, and it's probably a little bit of both. It's both better and worse for it. That it was very game specific and very gamey, and I agree that it was weird that the enemies respawn. But on the other hand, I also thought they found a good way of using or as gamifying the Force in terms of leveling up. Like it made sense that you unlock your powers by regaining your memories and your connection with the Force. I thought they handled that part very well.
Yeah, I thought that was cool that he had suppressed his emotions and the Force so much that he had to kind of relearn everything. That was definitely fun. I think I read that game has sold 8 million, or maybe shipped, I don't know, 8 million units. So very, very successful.
That was just in its first quarter, I think, as well.
Yeah. So
or in the last quarter.
I think that just shows how bad people want like a really good story single player Star Wars
I think
game.
the idea that people don't want single player games is really just something that the few very big production companies, also known as EA, like they really pushed the idea that people don't want that anymore. But I feel like especially the last couple of years really proved the difference. Whether it's a Spider-Man, a God of War, a Last of Us, people love it, and it's selling incredibly well. Even Red Dead Redemption 2. For the most, has an online mode, but like the single player was what sold the game, and incredibly well. So people are willing to pay a lot of money for it, and a lot of people are willing to buy it. And I think that just proves that it's worth to sometimes also just focus on a singular story, tell a good story, create some compelling characters, and people will then spend their money on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you played a lot of Star Wars games, Sako?
A few ones, yeah. It's been a while since I played another Star. That was the first Star Wars game that I played in a while, but I played some of the older ones, yeah.
Did you play any of the like Knights of the Old Republic or any of those games?
I played Knights of the Old Republic 2. I never got around playing the first one because it was quite a while after it released, and then the controls really just I had my issues with it.
That was the same for me.
Yeah, it was just I wanted to play it so badly, and then I played through first hour or so, and I just couldn't. Then the second one, it was a little more accessible, and with that, I had a great time.
Yeah, I still want to go back and try and play. Definitely at least 2, because I played just a tiny bit of 2, never finished it, and I kind of want to try 1 as well. There was a rumor of a remake happening.
Yeah,
I did see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
if that happens, I will
Who
definitely
knows?
play.
Yeah,
I will
absolutely.
too, for sure.
Did you play any of the Force Unleashed games?
I played them both. I think the first one for sure. I think I started the second one. I thought they were okayish.
Yeah.
It's just not my type of gameplay. It's fair enough, but I thought both in terms of story and gameplay was kind of okay.
I liked the first one quite a bit, but the second one was so short and very arcadey.
Yeah, I heard that. Now that I think about it, I don't think I finished the second one. Just started at like the first level or so.
Yeah. Cool.
But I'm excited to find out what they will do with the Fallen Order franchise, or what will come next. Apparently, Respawn is developing another title for EA in the Star Wars universe, and I would like to see where they go. Especially, like I mentioned, the constraints in such a franchise are pretty strong. And I read that Lucasfilms originally asked Respawn to not use any force powers or lightsabers in the game. So Lucasfilm was basically like, no, it's got to be a shooter, no force powers. You cannot call it Jedi, and all of that. And they put their foot down and actually made now that game, which I think was the right call. But that, I think, also shows how tough it is to work then with both Disney and EA and please the money overlords in order to develop a good game.
Man, there's so much that I feel like they could do with it, but I mean, like you say, they have so many restraints on what they can do. But I would love to see something set. Well, I guess kind of like Knights of the Old Republic was, like, set way, way, way before, like thousands of years before the current Star Wars that we know, or maybe even like way after it. They probably wouldn't do that though, because then they would be spoiling all their ideas and that kind of stuff. But it just feels like all the Star Wars games we get are just like, it takes place in between episode 3 and 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anything else to say about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order?
I mean, I also agree that I would like to see more explored in the distant past in the Star Wars universe, and maybe if they Old Republic remake or remastered are true, maybe they could tie it into that you have the remaster of that, and somehow that leads into whatever will become Fallen Order 2.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
that would
interesting.
Actually be pretty cool.
I didn't know that Respawn was like already in talks or in the works to keep working on.
I think it was confirmed.
I mean, it's such a success. I'm sure EA is, like, hey, that Star Wars did pretty good. You want to make some more? Did you play Titanfall or Titanfall 2, Akko?
No, I haven't yet, but I got Titanfall 2 with a PS Plus thingy, and I plan on checking it out at least at some point.
Oh, it's so good. The story is really, really good. I mean, I don't know how much you like first-person shooters, but it's surprisingly good for a first-person shooter that you think is just going to be like, kind of a shoot 'em up Call of Duty type game, which it is, but the story is actually really, really compelling.
I heard that, and I'm definitely tempted to. I heard good things about the campaign, so I want to check it out at some point. And now that I have it anyway, so might as well give it a try.
I can't wait to hear what you think about it. It's pretty short too. I think it's like 8-ish hours or so. So
okay.
Yeah,
it doesn't take too long to go through. Yeah, maybe even like 6 to 8 hours. Let's see. That was Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Talk to me about Uncharted.
Yeah, recently started it, the first one on my YouTube channel, and I played the first Uncharted when it came out, or the first 2 hours or so, and I didn't like it at all because
Yeah.
I hated the fighting mechanic. It was just too much shooting, and constantly I was dying, and I was miserable playing it. So I just dropped it and never really cared for the franchise again. And now the Nathan Drake collection, or what it's called, was free on PS Plus, and I thought, okay, maybe give it another try. Decent amount of people like these games, so might as well do it. And I decided to play through it on easy to not deal with combat so much, and that was definitely the right decision.
That's a good
And
idea. Yeah.
it's fine. I So a little bit of a spoiler. I finished the game by now, and it's okay. But I heard that the upcoming games focus more on the characters, the puzzle aspects, and less on constant barrage of bullets, which is really dragging the game down a bit, in my opinion.
I absolutely agree with you. I have you played 4?
No.
Oh, okay. So, in my opinion, I tried just like you. I tried playing 1 way back on the PS3 days, and I just did not like it. I'm terrible with a controller when it comes to aiming, and so I just could not get into it. It was so bad with it, and just didn't like the feel of the combat or anything like that. And put it down. I played a tiny bit of 2, and I could tell that 2 was way better, which I think you'll like 2 a lot more than 1. But I still just didn't love it. Couldn't really get into it, and I skipped 3 completely. But I went into 4 and absolutely loved 4. So to me, like 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is like way up there. So yeah, I think if you got through 1 and like you thought it was okay, you'll probably enjoy 2 quite a bit. 3 I've heard is pretty good, and then 4 is like amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and what I heard as well. I feel like Uncharted 1 really is the old generation of console shooters, where like the controls were really ugh. It
Yeah.
was tough to get through. Whereas nowadays, like shooters work well on consoles too. And but going back to Uncharted 1, it's like, I'm not good with shooters anyway, but I'm not that bad.
I'm bad.
It was a struggle, and I feel like, especially because it tells a very traditional adventure story, which is fine, and they do that all well, but it kind of just gets drowned in all the bullets.
Yeah, it's a bit cliche.
Yeah.
It's the closest thing that we get to Indiana Jones, though. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
for
like
sure.
playing a young Indiana Jones.
Yeah. So, are you going to go through the whole series? You going to start right on with 2 and 3?
That's the plan. Yeah, yeah. I do plan on continuing with 2 next week or so, and then probably if it's not too bad, I probably will also play 4 then after I finish the trilogy.
Yeah, I hope you don't get burned out by the time you get to, or by the time you finish the trilogy, because, like I said, to me, 1, 2, and 3 are just very much okay. Even though a lot of people say that 2 is like fantastic, but to me, 4 was just like miles above the other ones. Again, I never
Yeah,
played 3, so I can't really speak to that.
maybe if I get a little bit burned out, I will just take a break in between.
Yeah.
And then try it. And yeah, I heard they changed a bit of the game play in 4, so I'm excited for that, and may check it out.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I still think the shooting is bad. I feel like Naughty Dog just does not do shooting very well. Like even in The Last of Us, I don't really like The Last of Us
Honestly, I feel like Naughty
shooting very
Dog
much.
doesn't do gameplay in general very well. Like it's their weak
Yeah,
point of their games. Like they
yeah,
do stories well. They do characters exceptionally well. Like they tell a good story. They have excellent characters, and so gameplay usually.
Mm-hmm.
Like you tolerate the gameplay for the rest. Even The Last of Us, like you tolerate all the sneaking and insta kills for experiencing the story.
I think I would honestly agree with you, but I feel like Squash is going to disagree.
I was gonna say, am I the only one here who like kind of liked the Last of Us gameplay?
I mean, there was something about it. Like I think that have you played The Last of Us, Akko?
I played it, and it's my hot take that I'm not a big fan.
Really?
Fair enough. I can respect that.
I think I will preface though. I don't think it's a bad game. I don't think it's bad. I think it's all right, but for me, not more than that.
You feel like it's overrated?
For sure. For me, it's the most overrated game
Wow.
that I've come across.
I'd say
Because
Breath
a lot
of the
of people
Wild's
say
mine.
it's the best game ever for them, and
Yeah.
for me, it's like okay. So it's really that. I wouldn't say that it's a bad game by any means, though.
Do you feel like it's overrated in story or in gameplay or in both?
Definitely in gameplay, story a little bit. I think they do a good job atmospherically, and they do a great job with the characters. But I think the story itself is not as special as it is oftentimes made out to be, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, Squash, I want to let you talk a little bit because I feel like you had more to say about the gameplay. And what is it that you like and appreciate about the gameplay?
I mean, I think The Last of Us kind of really nailed visceral feeling combat in both how hand-to-hand stuff worked, and
The
even just
hand-to-hand
kind
was
of
really good.
even just how kind of an enemy reacted to getting shot by a bullet, or even like some like the clickers or the freakers, or are they called freaker? No, that's Days Gone.
Yeah.
The kind of normal runner zombies. I just really liked how things reacted in the world. I liked how you kind of had to scavenge mid-fight and craft kind of shivs and stuff to be able to safely get around certain enemies. It just felt involved, if you know what I mean. Like it wasn't just blindly going around picking up ammo and then killing things. It was like you almost had to prepare before going into a lot of fights, making sure you had enough ammo and the right guns. You had crafted enough kind of healing and had a weapon on hand in case things got hairy up close. It just felt kind of like immersive, if I could use that word.
Yeah, I think I think do you like stealth games, Sako? Are you a fan of stealth?
I do, yeah, for the most
Okay.
part.
Because I feel like if you play The Last of Us with a stealthy approach, to me at least, it's a lot more enjoyable than just trying to take enemies out. And I mean, I feel like you kind of have to play pretty stealthy in that game. But I enjoyed like just trying to look at each map as kind of a puzzle and like how to get around the enemies without making any noise or without attracting too much attention and that kind of stuff. But go ahead.
That is a good point. I can totally see that. I think for me, what bothered me in how they implied it was it like the mechanic itself isn't bad, but I felt because you have especially in some sections that are very tough, you have to do them over and over again because you have those insta kill moments or nearly insta kill moments.
Yeah.
And that just ripped me out of the immersion. And this game lives so much from the immersion, from the atmosphere, that
Yeah.
once you play a section for the 5th, 10th time,
Absolutely.
then it's like, yeah, you don't care anymore what's going on. It's just I just want to get through here, and
I get that.
That then kind of stands in the way of the strongest aspect of The Last of Us.
I cannot tell you how much I agree with that, because I feel like I have a hard time explaining that, but it's so true that when you die in a video game, especially a game like The Last of Us that's supposed to be so immersive, it really does take that immersion and that atmosphere away, because death is the worst thing that can happen in a game like that, because you want to have the you I'm bad at explaining this, but you want to have the what's the word? I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you want to basically like have the option to die, but you don't want to die. And once you die and then you just reload, then it just really takes you out of the immersion. So I totally get that, and I definitely agree with you on that.
And
Yeah.
I understand that to a degree. It is necessary for a game to obviously make it possible to die, because otherwise there would be nothing at stake. But I just feel like the way the enemies work in The Last of Us, because you are so vulnerable, you die so often. Just
Yeah.
it just happens when you, especially when you play it the first time. That the sections themselves, they are cool, but when you play it for the first time, you have to explore them, and you don't know how they look like. So you automatically have to pretty much have to die in each section once or twice at least, in order to figure out, oh, that's how the enemies walk, or there's one, or there's something to
That's
pick
how
up.
I'm supposed to go through this
And,
area.
and you don't know where that is the first time, and when you have to, but every time you die, as you said, it kind of takes you out of the immersion. So you pretty much through every section you go through with less immersion, because then there could be, because every time you have to die first one or two times in order to get through it.
There was that one area where I can't remember where exactly in the game it is, but I think it's about like, I don't know, 1/3 of the way through, where you come to like a little area. It's pretty enclosed, and there's a bunch of clickers there, and you pretty much have to try and take them out with your bow. And I swear I probably died like 15 times in that area. And you know, like you say, if you could get through that area one time, it would have been super immersive and like really really tense. But like by the 10th time that I had died, I'm like, okay, I know that I need to walk up here 2 steps to the right, shoot this guy in the head, go around here, do this. And like it wasn't, you know, it wasn't immersive at all anymore. It was just like, I just want to get through this area. So yeah, there were definitely some areas like that I totally get that. With all that being said, I absolutely loved the story in that game, and even more so just the characters, and just the whole story in general. I really really enjoyed in that game. I don't know how in the world we got off talking about Last of Us. I guess
Naughty
Uncharted.
Dog tie-in.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to Uncharted, I hope you can get through all of those and play Uncharted 4, because it's really really enjoyable, I think.
Yep, I hope so. I look forward to it.
Let's see. You didn't list this on here, but you've been playing a little bit of Breath of the Wild, haven't you?
Yes. On the Switch, yes. It's been a couple of weeks since I continued there, but I started.
Have you played any Zelda games before?
I played the original Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, because that was also my last Nintendo console. So before the Switch Lite that I now got for Christmas. So I watched playthroughs of Link to the Past and Link Between Worlds, and I think one more. But Breath of the Wild pretty much is the first one I played, because the Link's Awakening, it's so long ago, and I never finished it, because when I played it, I don't know, I was like 10 years old or so.
Yeah.
So it's way too frustrating. So I always started it and got like through the maybe to the first dungeon, if at all. So it doesn't really count.
So, a couple of questions. What do you think about the Switch overall? So you got the Switch Lite, right?
Yes, I got the Switch Lite. I really like it. I obviously can't compare it to the regular Switch, so I don't know how it compares there. But just for the Switch Lite, I think it is very well. It lays very well in the hand. It's surprisingly light, as the name suggests, but it's even lighter than I expected, and it just works everything very well. I have really no complaints with it. The only thing is that the built-in storage space is very limited, so you really need an SD card to.
Is it still 32 gigs?
I think it's even less than the Switch Lite.
Oh wow.
Or,
Yeah, that's
or
crazy.
it might be, but I, for example, I could only have Breath of the Wild and Pokemon Sword on there, and then it was full. Like there was no, like there was like just a few megabytes left.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, SD cards are really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not a big issue. So, but other than that, I had no issues, and I heard originally there were some frame rate issues with the remake of Link's Awakening, especially, but I didn't see any issues with Pokemon or with Breath of the Wild so far.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild had some issues when it first launched. They fixed those pretty quickly. Link's Awakening was awful though. But the biggest problem with it was it ran at 60 frames a second, but then all of a sudden, for no reason, like it would just drop to 30 frames a second. And it was very, very noticeable. Like if they had just locked it at 30 frames a second, I feel like it would have been better. But it was just that huge, change from 60 to 30. I normally don't care that much about whether games are 60 or 30, but just going from one area to the next and then having it drop so suddenly was very distracting and very annoying.
It's really more about running smoothly than like a. I think for me as well, it's as long as it's a consistent frame rate, I don't really care too much about it. But the issue starts when it has those hiccups.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like Horizon Zero Dawn is always the game I bring up because that game ran at 30 frames a second, but it was the smoothest 30 frames a second game I think I've ever played. But anyway, going back to Breath of the Wild, what do you think about it? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, but I'm only at the very beginning still. I think I'm at the third Great Plateau Temple in the very beginning, so very, very much.
So you're right at the beginning. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great. It looks great. I really like the design. It gives you, and I like the aspect that you can climb pretty much anything at any point. It just gives you a new sense of freedom that most games don't have.
Until it starts raining.
It never rains for me, so I guess I have the cheat on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing that annoyed me about that is you can climb anywhere you want unless it's sprinkling. But no, I like that game quite a bit. That was my first ever Zelda game that I played, and the Switch was actually the first Nintendo console that I ever had. So I've really been enjoying it. So yeah, that's cool that you are getting to experience that. Let's see. I've been playing a few games. I finished Sekiro finally, like officially finished it. I know it's crazy because I'm such a huge FromSoft fan, but I never actually finished Sekiro. I never beat the.
You didn't finish it last year. I remember us talking about it.
Yeah,
we both were playing it.
Yeah,
right?
so
or am I completely crazy here?
My first playthrough, yeah, I'm pretty sure you're correct. My first playthrough, I got the bad ending. Didn't really know what I was doing, and just kind of accidentally got the bad ending. So I mean, I technically did finish it, but then I started replaying it just off stream and going through it again and kind of following a guide to get the quote good ending. And got to that last boss, man, and I just could not beat him. Like I tried so many times, just on and off, and like I would put it down for a couple of months, come back, spend 5 or 6 hours fighting him, just could not beat him. So just recently, I picked it up again, went through the entire game again, really had a great time, and finally got to the final boss again. Started to feel like I was not going to be able to beat him again. And I finally just streamed it. And I was like, okay, we're just going to beat him, and I'm going to stream this until I beat him. And yeah, we finally did it, but that last boss is just insane.
So, help my memory. What exactly were the bad and good endings? Because I don't
So there's 4
remember which
different
one mine was.
endings.
Yeah.
There's one if you side with your father. Um,
Hmm.
the part where you first initially fight Genichiro, um, you can side with your father, and you'll fight Emma instead of fighting Genichiro.
Hmm.
And I think the game just like ends there, if I remember right. Um,
No, I don't think so. You then, I think, fight Ishin next, like
oh,
a
that's right. You fight
lesser
Emma,
version
and
of
then you
Ishin.
fight Ishin. And then I think it ends there. I remember it cut off like a lot of stuff. Um, I could be wrong. Maybe
I don't
maybe I'm
think
not
so. I
remembering
don't
this
think
right.
that's the case. I think it continues from there because I think that way is also how you fight then Owl back in the Hirata estate.
Maybe I'm remembering this wrong. I know that I chose to side with my father and fought Emma and then Ishin, and then maybe we did some other stuff, but I remember it ending pretty soon after that. And like then I looked it up and I was like, "Oh, I got the bad ending." And I realized that I missed all kinds of stuff. Um I'm going to have to look it up now because I
Can
don't
be.
remember.
I didn't choose that path. I well, so I might just be wrong here.
Yeah. Yeah, I really can't remember now. Do you know Squash?
Um, I only played through it once and like saw my one ending, so I'm not entirely sure.
I'm so bad with those games as far as like understanding the lore and everything. So yeah, I was like, well, I guess I'll stick with the Iron Code or whatever.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I played through it again, like I said, and used a guide to go through all the stuff. It's ridiculous all the stuff you have to go through to get like the true purification ending or whatever. Um, but it's still cool to me that they put all of that stuff in there, and so many people will never even find stuff like that unless you look at a guide. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I'm glad that I beat that final boss finally because I just did not think I was gonna ever beat him.
That is who is that the final boss?
Well, it's Genichiro, but then he you beat him, and then his grandfather like comes out of his skin or whatever. This sounds
Oh,
so
so
weird.
yeah, but okay. So that is the boss that I had.
Yeah, and then he has 3 phases that you have to go through and
Mhm.
beat him. So I'm pretty sure that um, the other 3 endings you always fight him,
Okay.
and the bad ending, the one that I got, I honestly don't remember who I fought as the. I thought it was like Ishin, Emma. I fought Emma and then Ishin, and then I thought the game just ended, but maybe I'm not remembering it right. Anyway, that game, I still have very mixed feelings on it. I like I said, I've always loved um, FromSoft games, and I kind of got addicted to this game again while I was replaying it. And so many of the things I do love about it, but it's so hard for me to compare that game to like Bloodborne or Dark Souls because I feel like it's just so different
Hmm.
in so many different ways. Just the way it feels and everything, the way that you don't have any stamina, just the combat system in general. Um, so it's hard for me to rank like where I would put them in order. Um, but I don't know. I really like that game. Have you gone back to it at all, Akko? Have you played any more of it?
No, and I really enjoyed it, but it's one of the don't feel the urge to replay it again. I think with the other Souls games, and I agree that it's hard to compare them. I really enjoyed Sekiro, and it's definitely up there. But after finishing it, I was kind of done with it. Like I
Yeah.
didn't really feel the need to go back.
Yeah, maybe it's because it has more story emphasis, but maybe less than any other FromSoft game. I haven't ever really had a desire to go back and like go through the New Game Plus on it or anything like that.
I think it's also for me that just in the Souls games you can try out different builds, you can try out different armor sets, etc.
That's a good point. Yeah, you only
which
have
changes the gameplay a little bit.
right.
Whereas in Sekiro you don't have that, and you still have, for the most part, the same story and the same paths you take. So I think that is what kind of keeps me from revisiting it. That I know that at least like the first 3-4 hours will be pretty much exactly the same as I played them the first time.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because with Dark Souls, like you can play through that game so many different times, but one time you can use a sword, one time you can use an axe, one time you can use a bow, so it's just always different. And same thing with like Bloodborne or something like that. So yeah, that's a really good point. Why it seems like it lacks the replayability. With all that being said, I still loved replaying it because my memory is so bad. I usually forget half the stuff that I play like within a few months anyway. So yeah, I don't have much else to say about that. It's a good game. I don't know. I'll probably play it again, but I'll probably put it on the back burner and probably play it in another year or two and go through it. But yeah, I can't wait for Elden Ring. Are you excited for Elden Ring?
Strangely enough, no, but it's also more because I kind of didn't really pay attention to the news. So I think once we get a release date, once we get like a good trailer, etc., I think then I will be hyped for it.
Fair enough.
I will definitely play it.
Have you played all of the other Souls games and
I have
Bloodborne?
not played Demon Souls.
You haven't played Demon Souls, okay.
But
yeah, I'm the same.
Other than that, I have played all.
When do you think we'll get Elden Ring, by the way?
I don't know. That's a really good question. He said, when do you think we'll get Elden Ring?
Oof. I mean, I would assume not this year, for sure. I would maybe early next year. Maybe something around the same release time, like Sekiro, just next year. So like March, April or something.
FromSoft has really been liking those spring release dates, it seems like, for the past few releases.
And if they could actually stick to it, and other developers pushing their dates back, they would be the only game in the spring anyway.
Yeah.
People have to play the game.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Not seeing any gameplay or anything from it to kind of guess when we're going to get it. I mean, it seems like most of their releases are pretty fast. They really have a fast turnaround time. And it seems like for the past few games, like we've seen kind of a CG trailer about a year and a half before they come out, and then 6 months or so before they come out, they'll show actual gameplay from it with a release date. So I could see it maybe being this year. I guess I could see them
certainly a big title to be released for the new
launch title.
Consoles.
Yeah, I could see them trying to internally aim for this year, but like so many games, just it getting pushed back, and they just internally push it back to next year.
There's also always the question that every developer team tries to get the launch title out. So maybe it's smarter to just wait a couple of months to then not be competing with all the other titles that will release them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, with all the games that have been delayed to later this year, it probably would be best if it's coming out early next year and not late this year. Because we got a lot of stuff coming out late this year now.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend the other day about Cyberpunk, and in my mind, I was like, "Oh my god, this game's coming out in April! Like, this is so soon! Oh my god, I'm so excited!" And then he reminded me it got delayed to September, mate. And I was like, "Why'd you have to go and say that, man?"
Got me that so one down. Really hurts.
I'm not against it because I want them to make the best game they can, but
And
it
The
still
Witcher 3 was
hurts.
delayed as well, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
I think twice.
Yeah.
Than the last time for a half a year or so, and I'm okay with that. Like I don't. Obviously, it sucks when you already have a date that you look forward to, but generally speaking, if it takes half a year longer for them to really polish it up, and then it actually works fine, and we don't get a Fallout 76, then I'm totally fine with it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. My biggest problem is I just wish people would stop announcing dates so early.
Yeah.
Because there's no
They
way
shoot
that
themselves in the foot
Yeah.
with that. Like,
it just doesn't do any good to me. You just get people excited and then you just let them down when you have to inevitably delay it, which so many of those games get delayed.
that, for example, was actually something good about Fallout 70. They announced it, I think, E3, and then it came out over or November. So it's just a couple of months or a few months before release, and I think that's really the way to go, because then it's not so far away. It actually makes sense for the people to pre-order that, not already a year before that, and then it really just takes a couple of months until then, and then you can actually play it. Whereas I feel with a lot of I feel a little bit about that with Cyberpunk as well. Although I'm very excited about it as a big fan of the Witcher games, is that it was announced. It just feels it's been announced for so long that I just can't keep the hype up for a year and a half.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
looking forward to play it, but now I can. For me personally, it doesn't matter if it's a month longer or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true because Bethesda did the exact same thing with Fallout 4 too. They announced that at E3 and then it came out just a few months later. And I, I don't know why they're. I mean, who knows what Bethesda is doing now? But I don't know why they're, not sticking to that because that just works so well to me. And they're announcing Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, and those games are years away. So
I think it's really about the pre-orders. I mean, when the release date for Cyberpunk was announced at last summer, right? And you could immediately pre-order it. So almost a year or a three-quarter of a year before the planned game release, you can pre-order a game. Although we all know that those games are the dates are never very accurate.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. I mean, now this spring was extreme that so many AAA titles got delayed at once, but it's not uncommon anyway. But for them, it's obviously a good way to get money early and to have a good gauge of how much interest is there. But then again, I also feel like, do we really need to discuss if there's interest for Cyberpunk? We know that most people who play video games will at least check it out. It's the same
I
with
feel
Red
like
Dead Redemption 2. Nobody questioned
exactly. I feel like they could have just not said anything about Cyberpunk and just released it, and that game would have, still been fine.
I put up the theory that is actually the way. If there should ever be a Half-Life 3, that is the way Steam should do it. Just release it, and the internet would go crazy. It would just spread like wildfire. Everyone would buy it. You have it on your Steam front page, and everyone would be like, "What the fuck?" and immediately buy it without even looking if they have the money for it.
Yeah. I mean, of course they would. It's Half-Life 3, and it's just like, here.
And it's kind of what Netflix does with their shows oftentimes, that they don't give you dates oftentimes a week before that, or sometimes just say, yeah, it comes out in the last quarter, and then all of a sudden it's out.
Take note, video games. What's your excitement for Half-Life Alyx? Do you have VR?
No. So I have no excitement at all.
Yeah. There you go. Have you tried VR?
No, I have not. It just never really interested me, as a concept, really. Maybe it would change once I would try it out and would see that it's awesome. But it's just, for me, never something where I feel like, oh, that's an investment I have to make. For that money, I would rather than get other I only have the PS4 and now the Switch Lite. So then I probably would rather get an Xbox to get the exclusive titles there. than get
Yeah,
a
of
VR
course.
set.
There's no point in getting an Xbox because all of those titles are coming to PC now. So
Yeah, that as well. Or I mean, in that case, I'll just spend that money on a gaming PC or invest it
yeah,
in that rather than hope for a decent VR game. Because how many really good VR games are out there? Like
yeah,
I mean,
not
I could
many.
probably
they are
count them
there, but
on like.
they're not many.
Mhm.
Yeah, VR is in a weird place. I feel like it is something that you really do have to try and have to experience to get it, and just to get just how cool it is. And I mean, some people are still not going to be into it, but I know for me, like when I heard about it and just imagined how cool it was, but then when I actually tried it, I was like, oh wow, this really feels real.
Mhm.
And just such another level of immersion. Um, but yeah, you're totally right. Like, there's just not really been any huge games to come out in VR. I feel like we're still waiting for those killer titles, and I don't know, maybe Half-Life Alyx will be one of them. But I feel like we still need a lot more before it's feasible for most people to jump into VR.
I wonder if they will do something for Cyberpunk with that, since it's first person anyway. That would be interesting.
I don't know. Yeah. Um, I feel like I remember hearing or reading an article. This was like months and months ago. That somebody asked them about VR, and they said that they're just not really interested in it right now. But that would be really cool. There was a demo of a Blade Runner. Um, I don't know. It wasn't really a game. It was just like an environment, basically, that you could walk around in Deckard's apartment from Blade Runner, and like, I mean, it looked so realistic, and like you could walk around, you could interact with things, you could like walk out and view the city, and just thinking about having a video game like that,
I
that
feel
would
like that
be
would be a good
pretty
first
cool.
step to really get people interested in it. To have a game similar to that is maybe more of like an adventure type, investigative type game where you are really more about the senses and looking around and investigating an environment.
Yeah.
I think that could be very interesting. Something like I'm not sure if you're familiar with the recent Sherlock Holmes games, but something like that where you're in first person, you have to
Mhm.
investigate a crime scene or something like that, and like actually have to look around, and you can look underneath a bed, for example. I think for that could be very interesting. There would be a very story heavy game that is not as much reliant on like quick motions.
That's a good point. Yeah, I played a lot of Fallout 4 in VR actually, and yeah, the gameplay itself is very janky, but just having the ability to like squat down in real life and hide behind a corner or like a broken building,
Mhm.
um, is just such a neat idea, in a video game, that you can actually
I feel
do
like that
something like that
Stranding
and
would be
just.
very good. Would have been very good for VR then, since it's a walking
Oh,
simulator
that's
anyway.
that's a good point. Yeah.
I feel like that would have worked very well. Like I know that there are sections, but I feel like that would have been manageable. And since most of it is really about your motion and walking through the landscape, I feel like that would have been very cool.
Oh, Vermont says I want to walk around the Citadel. Yes.
Mm.
Mhm.
That would be cool. Have a game in VR that. Oh man, EA, let BioWare do that.
Let
I've
BioWare
always.
do their own thing. Generally,
Yeah, that's true. I've always wanted a game like set on the Citadel where you, like, I don't know, play as CSEC security or something like that. I think that would be so fun. I
yeah.
basically just want to live on the Citadel. Um, that would be really cool. Yeah. Did you play Death Stranding, Octo?
No, no.
Do you have any? Do you have a PS4?
I do have a
Well, yeah,
PS4.
you do,
Yes.
because you were saying you were playing
Yeah.
Uncharted. Do you have any
Yeah.
desire to check that out?
No. Yeah. I will say I watched a bunch of it, and it was better than I was expecting it to be. But
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan of the Kojima style. I tried the latest Metal Gear, which a lot of people really like. So, and it was just not for me. And just I guess a lot of his style, from what I've seen, is just not something that interests me too much. And to a degree, I was confirmed by what I've seen other people play. But also, I will say it does look fine. Like I may check it out at some point when it's on sale or something like that. But there's no big desire to play it.
Yeah, it was the same way for me. I've never been a Kojima fan, and like you, I tried Metal Gear Solid 5, which was the first one that I had tried, and I didn't get it. I mean, the gameplay was okay. I didn't think it was that amazing, but I thought it was good and it was solid. Solid. Um, but yeah, I played a bit of Death Stranding, and I have to admit the story is actually pretty intriguing, and it has kept me like wanting to know more and wanting to find out more, which is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. But with that being said, like I haven't gone back to it. So I don't know. Maybe one of these days I'll go back to it. But yeah, Kojima.
I definitely think you
he's
should.
just weird. I know. Squash finished it, and he said it was worth finishing.
It was, for sure. It was one of my favorite games of last year, and I'm by no means a Kojima fan. I hated Metal Gear Solid 5. I've not played any of the other games, but Death Stranding, I really really digged it. I don't know. I mean, I do know why, but it would take me a long time to explain, I think, because there's a lot to it.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that I always had with Kojima's style of storytelling is that it felt very much convoluted for convolution's sake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like a good mystery. I do like a good open ending. I do like I do like a good convoluted story. I very much like David Lynch movies, and I like Twin Peaks, and like that is the peak of that, right? But with Kojima, I always had the feel it was just for the sake of confusing you. He confused you without knowing himself what he wanted to do with it. And I feel like I need to have at least the sense that at least in the author's mind, there is a solution. You don't have to tell me the solution. I like figuring it out myself. But that's also a thing with Dark Souls, for example, with the lore. I can't figure it out myself, but I'm very much interested in then reading up about it or watch videos about it that really dig into the item description and whatnot and figure this stuff out. There is a solution to the madness. I just never got the sense with Kojima. Having that said, though, from the bits that I've seen of Death Stranding, it feels a little more I guess I don't know, a little more solid.
Yeah. Yeah, there's still the bizarre, just, weird stuff just to be weird in that game, but it at least like had something there that I could tell that, oh, like this is actually interesting, and like this is actually something that's making me want to find out more about this world, and making me want to find out more about the story.
Because that's the thing, like you don't really feel motivated to find it out solution, and was never a solution in the first place.
Right. Let's see what else I've been playing. I started playing Resident Evil 0. Akko, have you played any of the Resident Evil games?
No, I don't do spooky games. I like watching them though.
Do you not play them because you just like don't like being scared, or just not into the gameplay?
That's it. I just don't enjoy being scared. I
Gotcha.
do get the concept why people it's the thrill and then the adrenaline that pumps up, but it's just not for me. I do a little bit better when it's just atmospheric horror, but jump scares, nope.
Yeah, I definitely don't like jump scares nearly as much as atmospheric horror. Like Soma, I loved Soma. I loved Amnesia. I felt like those were much better games as far as horror games go. So my history with Resident Evil, I played Resident Evil 7. That was my first Resident Evil game that I played, and really, really enjoyed that. And then when Resident Evil 2 was announced, the remake, I really wanted to try Resident Evil 1. And I tried it a long time ago and just hated the controls and didn't like the fixed camera perspective and all of that stuff. But I was convinced to try it again, and so I did try it again, and I ended up really, really enjoying it. And it's definitely scary, but I don't think it's like as spooky as like some of these games that are really just like straight up jump scares. It's definitely a little bit more atmospheric horror. But the biggest thing that I love about it is just the puzzle aspect to it. Like in the first one, you're trapped in a mansion and you're just slowly trying to like unlock the areas and figure out how to escape. And they just do puzzles really, really well. Same thing with the second game. I thought did a really good job with that. And so for the longest time, I'd wanted to go back to Resident Evil 0, which is the prequel to Resident Evil 1. And so I finally started that up, and it's really, really good. There's definitely some things I don't like about it. There's no item box, which is really just weird. So you literally just have to like drop things on the floor and then come back and pick them up later. I don't really get why they did that. And
I do in real
then
life too.
yeah, just take a shotgun out of your pocket and drop it on the floor, and then
Yeah,
come back and pick it up later.
happens when you get groceries and like your inventory is full. You need that milk, so you drop the shotgun.
Exactly, yeah. The other thing that I'm not crazy about is the bosses. I've never really been crazy about any of the boss fights in any of the Resident Evil games. But these are just not very well done, in my opinion, at least. And it mainly just comes to the lack of control in the game because, in those older games, like you can't control the camera. And so you hit one button to aim and it just kind of auto aims for you and just like tries to lock onto whatever target you're aiming. But there was one boss fight that I came up to where it's a flying boss, a flying bat basically, and then like it has
Flying
a bunch
enemies.
of other and then it has a bunch of other small bats that are flying around it, and it's so hard to hit the actual bat that you're trying to hit because again, like there's no way to fine tune your aiming or anything like that. You're just kind of spraying and praying. But again, with all that being said, like I still love the puzzle aspects to the game. Just slowly going through this area, you're kind of back in another mansion, and you're just kind of slowly unlocking areas and trying to figure out how to progress, and it's just really, really enjoyable.
So how do you feel did Resident Evil 7 compared to those older games? Like, do you feel like, and I know that it splits the fan base a little bit because I watched Resident Evil 7 because I will not play it myself. But it definitely looks very much inspired by games like Outlast and the more recent indie horror games that became big hits. So how do you feel does that compare as a new avenue for the Resident Evil series?
Yeah, I personally think they did a really good job at keeping the feeling. I kind of have a different perspective on it because I played 7 and then went to 1. But they do a really good job, in my opinion, of having the puzzles and just the sense of progression and tension that the old games had. And even though it's in first person, I don't have any problem with that. I think, if anything, I think it just kind of adds to the immersion. In 7, you're stuck in a house instead of a mansion, but you still kind of have the sense of like, okay, everything is kind of locked off, and you have to kind of slowly walk throughout this house and avoid the enemies and figure out how to unlock areas and things like that. I think 2 did an even better job with that. Akko, I don't know if you watched any of 2, but
bit, yeah.
Especially the first part where you're stuck in a police station, and it was originally an old museum, So it kind of makes sense that like they have all these hidden compartments and hidden doors and hidden rooms and things like that, and you have to kind of solve these puzzles and mysteries to unlock everything. But yeah, I think they did a really good job with it. I know some people weren't as crazy about the actual story in Resident Evil 7, but I thought it was still pretty good. I thought it was interesting, and kind of the way it ties in to the whole Umbrella Corporation later on in the game is pretty cool.
I thought so too.
What'd you say, Squash?
I just said I thought so too, in how Resident Evil 7 kind of was pretty good story wise compared to what most people were saying or kind of thought about it.
Yeah. That and then all of the DLC that they added was fantastic. They really supported that game really well. Not just adding like new story DLC, but they also added just really cool little mini games. They they just did some unique things. They had like a horror version of blackjack basically that you had to play. They had like an escape room type DLC where you were trapped in a bedroom and you had to get out. They had like just some silly modes. They had a really cool kind of mode where you start out in the basement area and you have to survive until dawn. And each hour gets tougher and tougher, and the whole throughout the time you're gathering, I think, scrap or something like that. And the more scrap you get, the more weapons you can make. And each time you die, it's kind of like a Metroidvania, where you die and then like you get to keep your equipment and everything like that, and your unlocks, and you go through it again and again. I just thought they did a really cool job with all the DLC. I wish they would have done more with Resident Evil 2 with that. But yeah, I have never gone or never thought I was going to hate a game so much as I thought I was going to hate Resident Evil 1, to just going completely in the opposite direction, just absolutely loving Resident Evil 1, and falling in love with just the whole series, except for Resident Evil 4. I hated Resident Evil 4, which I know most people love that game. I'm sorry, I just thought it was terrible. But yeah, super excited for Resident Evil 3. We could even talk a little bit. We're kind of mixing up our rundown, but that's fine. We can talk a little bit about Resident Evil 8 if you guys want to,
Sure.
because there's been some leaks about that. Basically, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be in first person again. It sounds like they're going to be using the same protagonist that was in 7, which, again, I know some people might not be super excited about that, but I think that's fine. I think that's pretty cool. But I don't know. I guess Akko... what'd you say, Akko?
Is he still unable to call the police immediately?
Yeah.
I thought that it was a little bit funny on the 7 that you get the notification that your girlfriend has probably been abducted by a crazy family, but you just check it out yourself.
You don't call the police or anything. You just go straight there and just check it out. Of course, it's video game logic. But yeah, so Akko, I'm assuming you're probably not going to play this game, but
that's correct. unless they change it to a jump and run game, I probably won't check it
out. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Squash, do you have any thoughts on the leaks?
I want to believe they're real because from what I've read, it sounds like really, really cool. But I think kind of the main thing I want is for them to stick to the first person, because I really digged how it worked in Resident Evil 7. And I think continuing with that trend and kind of experimenting with it, but going more back to like the zombie kind of side to Resident Evil could be interesting to see how they mix it up, if you know what I mean. Because with Resident Evil 7, they had the molded rather than zombies, which I didn't think was as bad because I didn't find the molded to be that scary. But especially with the engine they have and the amount, like the really good gore and dismemberment they can do on the zombies in the RE engine, doing that in first person in the kind of environments they're talking about, I think could be really, really cool.
Yeah, I didn't really love the molded enemies in Resident Evil 7. Just didn't really love the design. I think I definitely like the zombies a little bit better.
Yeah, I do too.
They
Um,
got a little bit generic as the game went on. Thought in the
Yeah.
beginning the moves were fine, but you see them so often that just after a while, that okay, it's another goop monster.
Exactly. Yeah, it kind of looks just like the same thing over and over again.
For sure.
You can't really you can't really like personalize a molded creature very much.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can, but I don't want to speak for anyone else.
I guess I don't know the thing that I want to know is just when we're going to get it.
Mhm.
It seems like maybe it's a little bit closer than we thought. But I mean, at the same time, like Resident Evil 7 came out what 3 or 4 years
2017.
ago?
Mhm.
Was it 2017?
Yeah, I think so.
So they've probably been working on that for quite a while. And Capcom, man, they are just really putting out these Resident Evil games pretty quickly. It seems like.
I think we could see it early next year for sure.
Yeah, that'd be a good January game. They keep putting
Mhm.
out. They
Yeah.
did 7 in January and 2 in January, so that'd be cool if they put out 8.
Sounds about right now.
Let's see. Anything else you guys want to talk about Resident Evil?
I think I'm good.
I think let's go ahead and move on to what we've been watching.
Okay.
Squash, you've been watching a bunch of stuff.
I have been kind of over the past 2.5 or so weeks. I'll start off with John Wick 3, which was a hell of a movie. I haven't, funnily enough, I've never seen John Wick 1, but I watched John Wick 2 maybe a year and a half ago, and I really liked it. And then John Wick 3, I kind of just sat down and saw it on Netflix, and I was like, oh, this could be a fun watch. And it turned out to be way better than I was kind of anticipating. I'd heard kind of mixed things when it came out, in that it wasn't. Some people thought that it wasn't as good as John Wick 2 and 1, and then others thought it was the best of the series. Personally, I enjoyed it a lot more than John Wick 2, but I think that's because 3 felt more brutal, and the fights, there was a lot more fighting from what I could remember. And they were better choreographed and just more fun to watch. And the story actually was somewhat interesting, if not a bit kind of out there and weird at times. But yeah, John Wick 3 was pretty good. Just some great Keanu Reeves action.
You should watch 1. I'm surprised you haven't seen 1.
Yeah, I don't know how I haven't watched it yet. I literally I don't even get the whole thing with the dog, but I think that's because I haven't seen 1. So
Yeah.
I think that explains it.
Are you a John Wick fan, Akko?
No, but that is only because I haven't watched them yet. It's definitely on my list, and it's just something that I haven't come around watching yet. But I
Yeah.
definitely want to watch it. I heard good things about all 3 of them, and it's on my list. I just need the time to watch them.
hmm
Sounds definitely like something that I would enjoy, though. As far as I understand, they try something new with the action genre and like bring in some new influences that really mix it up a little bit. So looking forward to that.
Yeah. I've only seen the first one. But I mean, to me, they're not like anything super special. They're just like a really solid, good action movies. And they don't, use like a bunch of cheap, like super quick cuts and things like that. They're
Yeah.
really well choreographed and just feel realistic.
I
As
think a big
opposed
part
to
of that is that the director, he is a former choreographer, right?
I don't know.
I'm
That would
I'm not
pretty
make
sure
sure.
sense.
he is. I think John Wick was that his directorial debut, and that is also why there's supposed to be such a high focus on these longer open shots of the fight scenes, because he himself did exactly that for years and put the emphasis on that.
Okay, cool. What else you guys been watching? Anybody jump in?
I mean, the latest thing that I've been watching has been The Witcher season Netflix. and I'm looking forward to later watch the second half of the final season of BoJack Horseman that just came out.
So what did you think about The Witcher?
I thought it was really good. As someone who read the books and also played the games, but this is obviously based on the books, I thought they did a really good job. And for the most part, I felt it was pretty close to the books, aside from some adaptation they had to do because of the format. But I really liked Henry Cavill as Geralt. I thought he did an amazing job as that, way better than I initially thought.
Yeah.
But like when it came out that he was supposed to play Geralt, I was like, well, let's see. But the more I've then heard and seen of him as Geralt, the more convinced I was that it was going to be okay. And then during the show, I really loved his portrayal as Geralt. I think he absolutely nailed it, and it was pretty much the case for any other character as well. I thought they did a really good job with the characters. Some episodes are stronger than others. I wouldn't say that it's the greatest show on earth, but I think, especially for fans of the books, it delivered, for me at least, and also set up the stage for what is to come. And for those who have read the books, I think it's pretty apparent that this first season was really just about setting up the scene, and I think both stylistically and structurally, season 2 will be a lot different.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I haven't read the books, but obviously played the games and love the games. So I have a different point of view on that for some areas, but I still enjoyed it quite a bit. I didn't like how it jumps around so much, but again, I mean, I kind of understand that they're going off the books and not the games and that kind of stuff. So it was a little hard for me to follow. Like I want to watch it through all the way again.
I do too.
And I'll probably do that at least one time before the next season comes out. But I
think it was to a degree necessary to do that, because one of the things, that is obviously no spoiler, that the three main characters are Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer. And in the books, Yennefer only appears at the end of the first book, and Ciri only appears 1.5 books in. You can't do that in the show. Like, you can't introduce two of the three main characters halfway through and then at the end of the season 1. So they had to figure something out on how to do that. And I thought they did it in a way that made sense. Yes, I can see it being confusing, especially if you do not know anything about the books and about how it works. But I think they still did a good job with that, explaining it. And also, it motivates you to rewatch it. So I guess that's also nice, since we now have to wait for the next season.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you, though, that when it came out that Henry Cavill was going to be playing Geralt, I was like, I don't know. I'm not really seeing that. But man, as soon as I saw him in it and just got through like the first episode, I was like, okay, I'm down for this. I think he did a really, really good job.
Yeah, it turns out he is a big gamer. So
yeah, that's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you hear that then a lot with actors when they have a role that is based on a video game. And it's like, oh, of course, I played all through. But with him, it actually seemed genuine. Like, he did not only know the basics. Like, he clearly, at the very least, in preparation for the job. Maybe he didn't do it initially, like he says, but at the very least, he read the books for the job and he played the games for the job, and you could see that. And I think you could see a certain passion and understanding of the character and the nuances and the way he handled the character.
Yeah. One thing that I was confused about, though, is and maybe this is different in the books than it is in the games, but in the games, the silver sword, the hilt, is that what it's called? Like you have the handle and then the hilt. The silver sword, the hilt is angled down, and the regular sword is angled across, but it's the other way in the show, isn't it?
That can be. I didn't notice it, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't notice either.
Maybe it was just a tiny detail. I don't know. I guess playing The Witcher 1.
Sort
Have
of
you?
right.
Did you play the Witcher 1, Akko?
Yes, I played. It was actually the first game
The first game that you what? Sorry, that cut out.
that I streamed.
Oh, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess to me in The Witcher 1, like it's such a bigger deal about you getting your silver sword than it is in the other games because you don't start out with your silver sword in Witcher 1.
Mm.
And when you finally got it, I don't know, I love the silver sword and just the way you get it and everything.
Yeah, The Witcher 1 certainly aged not as gracefully as the other Witcher games, but still think in terms of the mechanics and storytelling, it still holds up very well. And also, it's probably the game that is the closest in terms of the depiction of the world to the books.
What did you think about the combat in Witcher 1?
I liked it. I think it takes some time to it's really more like a rhythm game, but I
Yeah.
felt like once you then got the hang of it after a couple of hours, it is actually a lot of fun. Like I think it is something different.
Yeah.
It's not your regular combat, and I always thought that it actually added to the game because it was different, and later on it is a lot of fun.
I knew I liked you, Akko. I love the Witcher 1 combat. It always bothers me when people say that they hate it or that the combat is garbage because I just think that they don't really understand it because it is kind of complicated and you have to learn that it is a rhythm type game that it's almost like its own little mini game that you're playing.
Yeah.
And then the way that you have 3 different styles for each of your silver sword and your regular sword. And
you actually have to use them. It is not like
yeah.
you can use them. For example, I played a Neo not too long ago, and like I rarely switch my style, and I probably should have done it more, but you don't really have to
Right.
Whereas like in The Witcher 1, I felt it is not only encouraged to do that, you automatically start doing it because it just makes sense based on the
Yeah.
music.
It feels so good to go into a group of drowners and use your fast style and just like take out a bunch of drowners at once. And then it feels good to like go up against a really big heavy hitting guy and like use your heavy style and yeah, man. And then the signs, like I felt the signs were so well done in The Witcher 1 compared to other games. I love it.
And I think that the fighting style that very well in the show. They had Geralt having this very flowy dance fighting style really stood out. Whereas oftentimes in those medieval fantasy type worlds, you have these heavy hitting brutal swings. Whereas no, it was very gracious how he fought, and very quick and fast and flowing. And I thought they did a really good job.
How did you feel about the combat in The Witcher 3?
I think it's certainly not the standout part of The Witcher 3. It gets fairly trivial to the end because you're very overpowered no matter on which difficulty you play. But I also think that it's fun enough. Like I think the way it played out, for me, it was more important that it didn't start to bother me later, because I feel more games have then the issue that they just ramp up the difficulty so high to make a very simplistic fighting style then engaging, quote unquote, in the late game, whereas then it becomes tedious. Whether in The Witcher, yeah, you were overpowered and combat wasn't really that much of a challenge anymore. But also, I felt like at that point, you really didn't care anymore. It was fun to fight, but you were focused on the quest and the stories. And that is really the main actor in The Witcher anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was kind of disappointed with the combat for quite a while with The Witcher 3 because I felt like it was so close to being really, really good, but there were just a few things that were keeping it from being really good. I felt like Geralt's movements in general just felt kind of sluggish and didn't feel very responsive. And they did kind of fix that and work on it a little bit. They added an alternate movement to it. But I don't know. I think part of it too is Dark Souls has just kind of ruined me for that type of combat. Like I
think maybe something more along the lines of God of War could be fun in terms of fighting style, which certainly
God
a
of
little more
War,
flowy and lighter,
yeah.
but not as endurance heavy as Dark Souls is, but
Hmm.
still more engaging than The Witcher 3 was.
Yeah, God of War was probably one of my favorite combat systems that has been done in the past few years.
Actually, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, I think that type of like switch out the lightsaber with a silver sword, and I think that would fit Gal pretty well.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like if they had that would honestly be my dream game, is to be The Witcher 3 with Souls like combat. I just, and I guess that's why I didn't like it as much, is because I just felt like it was so close to being similar to Souls like combat, but there were just a few things missing and it just didn't feel responsive enough. And of course, like the stamina management wasn't really anything that you had to worry about in The Witcher. Um, so yeah, I still say that I love The Witcher 1 combat. I think better than any of the other ones. But that may just be me. Let's see. Oh, talk to me about BoJack Horseman, because I know you're a big fan of this show and I know nothing about this show.
It is, in my opinion, by now without a doubt the best Netflix original show. Period.
What is
And
it?
Damn.
Give me like a brief synopsis. I know
okay,
nothing about this.
so it is obviously an animated show that primarily is probably best described as a comedy show. However, it is like it is hard to describe because it is a mix of many things. I know a lot of people, when they see maybe the first few minutes or just clips of BoJack Horseman, it just very much feels a lot like Rick and Morty, like kind of like a wacky comedy thing. But where BoJack Horseman really shines for me is that it actually has some relatable characters, that it deals a lot with flawed characters in oftentimes a characterized way, but still very, very relatable. And it puts the finger on a lot of issues, both socially and just personally, and then manages it to create character progression over seasons while also being absolutely hilarious. And just that mix really stands out to me. I of all the shows that I've watched, and I'm probably more of a show guy than I am a movie guy. It is up there, maybe my favorite of all time,
Wow.
and that both in terms of comedy and serious shows.
I didn't realize it was a Netflix original.
It is,
Mhm.
and it's actually one of the very first. I think it is. Yeah, I think it was after House of Cards, and I think it was the second one after House of Cards, and maybe then Orange is the New Black. But it's like around that time.
Yeah, I guess that's why I didn't realize, because I knew it was pretty old. I knew it had been on for a long time, and I just didn't realize that that was a Netflix original, since they were only making a few back then.
Yeah, yeah, and now this final season is season 6, if I'm not mistaken. And in my opinion, up until like the season 1 probably is the weakest one, in the sense like, I don't know, Game of Thrones, the first season was the weakest one. It's kind of like you need to feel it out a little bit, and later on it lives a lot from how the characters are established and how it develops from there. So from then it was a steady increase in quality, with season 5 being my personal favorite season. And now season 6, I thought it split into two halves, and the first half maybe not as strong as season 5, but still on a very high level. And I expect now the second half to be of similar ish quality. And yeah, therefore, just if they could not, if they're not completely botching the ending now, just in terms of consistency and quality, it's also way up there.
Well, let's hope it ends better than Game of Thrones.
Let's hope so.
That's cool. I will have to check it out.
Yeah, give it
I
a
would
try.
definitely recommend it as well.
Oh, you've watched it too, Squash?
I've watched up until like the end of season 4, so I've not seen season 5 or any of 6. I kind of fell off a bit and got distracted by other stuff, but I would like to go back and continue to watch it.
Okay. Let's see. I watched 1917. I went to the theaters and saw that a couple of days ago. I'd really been wanting to see this. For anybody that doesn't know, it's a World War One movie, and it's the main kind of thing with this movie is it's shot in a way to make it look like it's one continuous shot, which is something that's really interesting that hasn't really been done a whole lot. And I think it's even more interesting to try and do this with a World War One movie. The basic idea of the movie is that there is a huge battalion, 1,600 people. I think it's British soldiers that are about to attack the German front line. They think that they have caused them to retreat and they're about to go and attack, but it's actually just a ruse by the German army to set them up to ambush them. And so this general sends two guys on a journey to give a message to them to call off the attack. So it's a pretty simple story, but just the way it's shot and just the cinematography of this movie is just unbelievably good. The story itself, I was a little just kind of let down because it's a little anticlimactic. But I think it's absolutely worth watching if you just really appreciate cinematography and just beautiful movies. And like I said, the way that they shot this movie, it's not one continuous take, but the way it looks like it, I just can't even imagine what they had to go through to plan this movie out. I was watching a little bit of the behind the scenes, and they were saying that they had to basically shoot the entire movie on cloudy days because they, wanted the lighting to always be consistent. So there would be some days that they literally just couldn't even shoot. They would be completely ready to shoot, but they were just completely relying on the sun to shoot, and they would have like the cloud come over the sun for 10 minutes or so, and they'd be able to do one take, and then they wouldn't be able to do anything else all day. So it was a really interesting movie. I'm glad that I saw it on the big screen. I think I may have hyped myself up a little bit too much for it, but still really good. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie I want to see. In fact, I'm going to see it tomorrow. But yeah, I'm very much going into it a little bit less. Like I've kind of subdued my hype levels a bit since you told me about it a couple of days ago. But I'm still very much looking forward to kind of just going in and enjoying the experience for what it will be.
I think it's cool too to just have a World War One movie. There's not really a lot of movies that are about World War One. It's always World War Two.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
What else you been watching, Squash?
I watched this pretty damn funny movie called See No Evil, Hear No Evil. I don't know if either of you have heard of it before or watched it before. It came out
Haven't
way
heard
back
it.
in '89. It's basically about a guy, a deaf guy and a blind guy, who are kind of navigating around New York, I think it is. And the deaf man is played by Gene Wilder. The blind guy is played by Richard Pryor. And it's a really interesting dynamic how they can kind of get around the place, because obviously the guy who can see is deaf, so he can't hear what anyone's saying or anything that's going on around him. But then the blind guy can hear what's happening but can't see anything. So they kind of have to figure out how they move around, but also how they communicate with people, and it leads to some hilarious interactions. Both characters are played really, really well. And basically, the gist of the story is Richard Pryor, his character, comes to this newsstand to try and get a job. He ends up getting it, somehow through the experience that they had in that conversation. That was hilarious. But then basically a murder happens at the newsstand, and then they get framed for it in a way, and then they have to they have to escape custody and then try and find the people who did this murder, and it leads to some crazy stuff, but it's all pretty funny and pretty well done, I think. It's definitely an 80s movie though. Like it doesn't have many boundaries in terms of what they say and what they do.
This movie has a 28 on Rotten Tomatoes. 28%.
I mean, I can see why not many critics would probably rate it well, but it's a pretty hilarious movie regardless of the ratings. I think don't go into it expecting some kind
Yeah.
of masterpiece in movie making, but it's really, really funny.
I feel like the critics' view on comedy movies in particular is always a little off. It's hard to really go by. I mean, it's generally you shouldn't put too much faith into critics to what you might like, but I feel like especially with comedy movies, there's a lot of opinions that certain humor is just beneath the critics and therefore cannot be funny in any way.
Yeah, it's so subjective. And I mean, I should say it has a 28% on Rotten Tomato, but the user score 72%. So, so there you go.
Yeah, that's a very good movie. It's on Netflix, I think. It is in the UK at least. So, if you want to watch a funny movie, I recommend it.
Cool. What else?
I watched a horror movie called As Above, So Below. I've kind of been watching quite a few horror movies lately. As Above, So Below is kind of like this horror spin on Tomb Raider in a way. So it's all filmed kind of in a found footage type of way, so like through a video camera or through the perspectives of different cameras. And basically, there's one woman who's basically Lara Croft is trying to find this, I guess, treasure underneath or very deep underneath the catacombs in Paris. I think they're in Paris. And it's all very creepy and disturbing. They go down in a group of like 6 people, and throughout the movie they get picked off here and there, and it ends up only being like 3 surviving. But it's a pretty good horror movie. I think it's not the scariest thing I've ever watched. And it's kind of generic in its story, but there was definitely some unique ideas there. And I'm a pretty big fan of the kind of found footage / camera or video camera kind of shot type movies, like Cloverfield, the original. I like that movie quite a bit, and stuff like that. I think I enjoyed it more because of the way it was filmed, if you get what I mean.
I gotcha.
Yeah, but yeah,
is it very shaky? Very shaky.
Surprisingly, no. I think in certain moments it can be pretty shaky, but
that's the thing I always hate about those found footage movies.
Yeah, it can be painful to watch at times for sure.
I stay away from horror movies as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. On the topic of horror movies, I watched another movie called The Possession, which stars what's his name? Jeffrey Dean Morgan, the guy who plays Negan in The Walking Dead. It has like a couple child actors in it too, and one other woman. I can't remember their names though. And it's kind of it's a very good horror movie, but it follows a lot of tropes. So like that's shot. There's a couple scenes that are shot kind of in a very cliche way. The story is kind of just your generic horror kind of story, in that this woman, well, not this woman, this Jeffrey Dean Morgan's daughter kind of finds this box at some kind of yard sale, and takes it home, and the box kind of talks to her and tries to get her to open it, and then obviously there's something in the box that then takes control of her, and things escalate from there and gets all kind of crazy and weird. But it had a pretty good conclusion. I think it ended, I guess, on a cliffhanger, because somehow this movie's based on a true story, which I don't believe after watching it, but it's somehow based on a true story. and so I can see why they'd end it in that way, because it's very kind of doesn't tell you much, but if you look into it, the story itself, then things kind of tied together pretty well when you think about it, and it's pretty interesting to think about in general, I think.
Have you ever seen It Follows, Squash?
That's insane that you say that, because I literally watched that movie like 3 days ago or 4 days ago.
Did you?
Yeah, one of my friends recommended it to me because I've been watching some horror movies, and so it was on Amazon for like 99p to rent. So I decided why not, and watched it.
What did you think about it?
I thought it was pretty good. It kind of felt a bit pointless in the end, because it was like the film itself, It Follows, is kind of there's this thing. I was joking that it's kind of like a really, really bad STD, in that this thing is transferred to different people whenever they like have sex or whatever, and then that person is then followed, basically, followed by this thing that is trying to kill them over time, and it can only ever walk. So
It
it's a bit.
sounds so cheesy, but
It really is cheesy and
It's
dumb.
crazy that
It's
they
done much
that they
better,
made a
I
third,
think.
It movies so quickly after the second one.
Oh
It's a
no,
weird
it's not.
trilogy.
It's not an It movie. Oh wait,
I
are you
know.
joking?
I'm joking.
He's
Adam. I know
joking,
you're
yeah.
joking.
But yeah, I'm probably not explaining it pretty well. The movie is better than what it may sound like, but it's I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I was kind of watching it at the same time as someone else, so we were comparing thoughts and stuff, which made it better to watch, I think.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a good example of a horror movie that is not doesn't have like a bunch of jump scares and things like that, but
Mhm.
is just more creepy in a way. I thought it was
Yeah,
pretty
it doesn't
good.
really have many tropes either. It's pretty unique
Yeah.
in its
Mhm.
kind of theme.
Actually, the perfect movie to watch in a group, as I found out in a very good way, that is The Greasy Strangler, if you heard of it.
The Greasy
I have
Strangler.
not heard of
I've
that.
Yes,
this.
it's a movie nobody knows except those who do, and they are not able to forget about it. It's it's basically. Are you familiar with Wes Anderson movies
Yeah.
and the style of it? It's basically that on LSD. Um, like it is absolutely bananas, but it's intentionally crazy in a very, very good way, and it's just so weird and off-putting, and it combines a lot of weirdness in ones and a lot of weird aspects in ones. But I honestly think it's a really good indie movie. Um, if you're in the mood for some craziness, and especially good to watch in a group, because then you can laugh your ass off for hours.
Cool. What else, Squash?
I've kind of been watching a bit of the new season of Titans. I don't think it's new. I think the season 2's been out for a little while now. I'll preface this by saying I'm not the biggest DC fan. I don't know a ton about the universe, but I watched season 1 of Titans kind of going in knowing that people didn't like it a whole lot, but I came out the other side having kind of enjoyed it quite a bit. I kind of liked the characters, even if it was a bit corny and confusing at times. I thought it was a pretty fun watch. The story was interesting enough. I didn't like the ending of season 1 at all. I was very annoyed by it. But having watched the first couple episodes of season 2 now, it makes sense why it ended like that, because they've now kind of tied it up properly and moved on to the next thing. But basically, Titans is the Titans in the DC universe are like what Robin went on to do after he like left Batman. So like the Robin that eventually becomes Nightwing is the Robin that the TV that the Titans are run by. And there's a couple other heroes in the Titans. I think Hawk and Dove are two There's one woman with like a golden lasso. I don't remember her name, but they were the original Titans. Um, and then the new show is focusing on kind of a younger, new age of the Titans, I think. And season 2 especially is kind of pushing that kind of agenda. Yeah, like DeSella says, it's very much kind of like a mini Justice League.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. I've been watching Star Trek Picard. I don't know if there's any Star Trek fans here, but I'm a massive Star Trek fan.
I would like to be a Star Trek fan, but I'm not really.
So The Next Generation was just, I don't know, something that I watched as a kid. I loved watching The Next Generation. It's probably my favorite Star Trek. I know it's kind of hard to get into, especially nowadays. But this just hits a huge nostalgia nerve for me, because this is kind of a continuation. This doesn't take into account any of the J.J. Abrams Star Treks or anything like that. Not that I think that those are bad. I mean, I kind of enjoyed the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. But this is just like a straight continuation of Jean-Luc Picard and his story. It's a pretty interesting story, too, I think. This is supposedly just kind of a mini series. This is just like a one-time thing that he's doing. At least that's what they're saying. Just a 10 series episode, or 10 series mini series. And the basic gist of the show is that Picard is kind of retired, living in his orchard, tending to his grapevines and that kind of stuff, making wine now. And he finds out that Data, who was an android, and kind of the only sentient android in the universe that they knew of, possibly created a daughter, so to speak. And androids have been outlawed in the Federation for a while now. So he's trying to figure out if this daughter of Data's is actually alive and trying to save her. And it's really, really well done. And it just feels good to have a really good Star Trek back.
I heard it's good. I never really got to Star Trek. I watched a couple of the old movies. I watched the first J.J. Abrams movie, but I never really got into the shows. So not too connected to that, but I did hear that so far, like the first reaction that I heard about Picard, that it's pretty good.
Yeah. Star Trek to me, I've always been a much bigger Star Trek fan than I have been like Star Wars or anything like that. Star Trek is always kind of what I imagine a Mass Effect TV show would be like. The universe in Star Trek is very similar to how it is in Mass Effect. I feel like if anybody likes Mass Effect, you would definitely like Star Trek. It's very similar in a lot of ways.
If I wanted to watch Picard, like where should I start in terms of getting caught up on what I need to know?
I don't know. That's a really good question, because I mean,
start in the 60s. That's just a little bit to catch up to.
I mean, I feel like if you could probably just go in and start watching this show and be fine, Squash, but you're just not going to have like the connection that you have or that I have with it, because like Star Trek The Next Generation was 7 seasons, and that just kind of follows the whole story of Picard and his crew. So unless you want to go through all of Star Trek Next Generation,
I might.
So if you do, I will warn you, especially the first season of Star Trek Next Generation is extremely slow. And I hate when someone tells me like, oh, this show is amazing, but the first couple of seasons are like really, really boring. So you just have to get through those. And I hate when people tell me that, because I don't want to sit through a bunch of episodes. I don't know. I honestly
I've been told that you can kind of like skip a lot of the Next Generation, and that
that's what I was going to say.
You only really need to watch a select few episodes here and there to
because back then it wasn't like a continuing story. I mean, it is like there's some stuff that kind of carries over from week to week, but for the most part, like every week was just kind of a whole new story. So you, I don't know which or where it starts, but when they start dealing with the Borg in the Next Generation, that's when stuff does start getting really, really interesting and does actually start carrying over, like from episode to episode and season to season. I think it's like around season 4 or something like that.
Okay.
I wonder. I don't know. I feel like you almost need a resource that tells you like which episodes to watch, because there are some fantastic episodes that you could just go in and watch and not really know anything about the rest of the story, but just get into. So yeah, if you could find something like that, maybe I'll try and look for something too and see if I can send it to you.
Okay.
Because there's definitely some shows in the Next Generation that are just like fantastic stories that are worth watching. And if you could watch those and then get caught up, then I think you would really, really appreciate Picard going into that.
No, I'll definitely look into it. I know, I'm pretty sure there's some lists out there of the episodes you'd need to watch to catch up for Picard. So I'll take a look for sure.
I also think Star Trek Voyager is a really good Star Trek to get into for anybody that has never watched Star Trek and wants to get into it, because I think the overarching story of Voyager is just honestly much more interesting, especially the way it starts out, because the premise of Voyager is they are thrown halfway across the galaxy, and their whole mission is just to get back home. And so like they do still have kind of individual stories every week that would take place, but they're always like constantly working on getting home, and it's just a much more interesting story, I think, and a little bit easier to get into.
I can definitely see Star Trek being much more related to Mass Effect than anything else, because the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars was explained to me in very simple terms is that while Star Wars usually deals with a personalized conflict, Star Trek is more about civilization and cultural conflicts that need to be solved, and the questions that are raised about finding new civilization and how to approach that, and all of that. Whereas Star Wars usually tells more of a story about a person or a group of people.
That's a really good way of putting it. Also, Koala, that's a fantastic idea. Squash, just watch the Next Generation movies.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it, because you could start with the first one, which is First Contact, I think. And that's a great introduction, and also a really good movie. That's a really good introduction to just kind of Star Trek in general, and a really good introduction to the Next Generation cast and Captain Picard and all of that. So yeah, that's what I would do. I would just watch the movies, and then if you're interested in them, you could go back and watch the Next Generation. Yeah, very good idea.
Be what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point as well, DeSellis. Star Wars definitely leans more into the fantasy aspect, while Star Trek is pure sci-fi. Star Trek is
Star
what...
Wars is space wizards, right? Like that's really what it comes down to.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Star Trek is always like what I hope our civilization becomes in 200 or 300 years. And Star Wars is just like this crazy fantasy that...
I always wanted to be a Gungan, so...
Yeah, there you go. Anybody else got anything else that they've been watching that you want to throw out?
I don't think so, no.
Once again, we have blown through our time. We're already at 2 hours. Akko, are you okay on time? You can go a little bit longer?
I'm okay, yeah. Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Well, let's see. We've got just a little bit of news to talk about. We already talked about Resident Evil 8. But we can talk about the Warcraft 3 disaster that has happened.
So it's fine. Everyone is happy with it.
There's no issues
So
at all.
I don't think any of us are really big Warcraft fans, are we?
Nah.
Um,
No.
but we can at least kind of comment on it a little bit. My understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I really just kind of found out about this today, but Blizzard put out some videos and gameplay and things like that in 2018 of Warcraft 3 Reforged, which is kind of a remastered version of Warcraft 3. And long story short, it looks nothing like what they put out. It's they showed cutscenes that looked amazing, like they had redone the cutscenes and all of this, and now the new Warcraft 3 Reforged is just like using the same old cutscenes, but they're just up-resed a little bit. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It seems like a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also not too much into the topic, but the way I understand it, the big issue is that Blizzard promised a lot of things and a lot of features and a lot of improvements to the original Warcraft 3, and then if it happened, it was only a very slight improvement, if it happened at all. And in a lot of ways, it didn't improve at all. There are still bugs in the game that were around in the original version. And for something that is supposed to be not just a remastered but a remake, at least to a degree, like it is supposed to be more than a remastered. People are very unhappy with that.
Yeah, and you put this in the rundown, Akko, that I think is really interesting. This is from US Gamer, or from Polygon, but it says there's yet another interesting wrinkle to the story as well. As US Gamer points out, Blizzard has also updated some of its terms and conditions as it relates to custom game modes. It appears to be a defensive move to protect the company from losing out on the revenue generated by adaptions based on its work. You'll recall that Dota began life as a fan-made custom map for Warcraft 3, and then transitioned into a multi-billion-dollar genre all its own. The new language effectively means, as PC Gamer puts it, that all of your Warcraft 3 Reforged custom game modes belong to Blizzard, and that rubs the community the wrong way. So basically, they are not. They're saying if you create any custom games, it belongs to us, and they're not even going to give you credit for it.
Yeah,
and
so
that just
as far as I understand, it's not only that obviously they would own the quote unquote physical map that you created or the physical game mode that you created, but also the intellectual property behind it. So the idea behind the game mode would belong to Blizzard as well.
Yeah,
because it's their game mode. So even if you if we translate that to Dota, it would be that not only would they have owned the original individual map that was created, but they would also own the idea of the MOBA, basically.
that's crazy.
Hmm.
I mean, it's their right to do that, I guess, but it's pretty scummy.
Yeah.
And it's just another thing, and we talked about that a little bit before we started. It's like after one scandal after another at Blizzard headquarters, you would assume that they want to do something to appease the fans. Instead, they just shovel more coals into the fire.
Yeah, I mean, this was a company that was just loved by the community, but so much.
And everything they did turned into gold, right?
Right.
World of Warcraft, and in obviously Dota was then something that now backfired in a way, but still, a lot of people gave them credit for having the opportunity to create something like Dota with their engine, and then Hearthstone and whatnot. Everything turned into gold quite literally for them.
Yeah.
And everyone was happy with the product as well. Like people were happy with the customer support, with the way the games were supported over years and years. And now it feels like over the last 2-3 years, they spent all of that goodwill in a heartbeat.
It hurts so much because I mean Blizzard. I've never really been into Blizzard games. I played a little bit of Diablo 3. That was kind of my first introduction to Blizzard games. But I mean, I definitely can relate to this as far as like BioWare games go. I feel like BioWare is not the company that they used to be. And
Bethesda
that
lately to a large degree
Bethesda,
as well.
yep.
Yeah.
So many of these big companies that have put out these games that we have loved and fallen in love with, and it just hurts so much to see these companies just becoming so greedy and just feeling like they don't care about their communities. They just care about the money now, and
it just feels so
it sucks.
disconnected to the community because obviously they want to make money, and that has always case. I just feel like they are completely out of touch with what their audience wants and what their audience cares for. And like you mentioned, companies like BioWare or Bethesda, not only have they provided us as gamers with great experiences, but they have also influenced the landscape of video games in general very, very heavily. Same with Blizzard. And now they kind of throw that away recklessly for a quick buck, and you wonder where that leads, because you see that now with BioWare, the sales numbers on Anthem were terrible, and 5 years ago everyone would have thrown money at them.
Yeah.
So it's really just a short-term thinking where they think they can make a lot of money, but long-term they lose all their customers. And then even if they come out with something that might be good, people won't be as interested as they were before.
I think in turn, though, even with all these once loved companies kind of going down a dark path, there are kind of other ones either redeeming themselves or kind of coming out of nowhere and becoming new fan favorites. Like CD Projekt Red has been very much loved by the overall gaming community in the past 5 years, I think. And same can be said for Capcom. In the last few years, they've really been on a roll, as DeSellis has said. But I mean, even still, I think there's more companies in it for the money currently than there are kind of in it for the community and stuff like that. At least the more notable companies, anyway, because there's the indie companies and stuff like that too.
It's obviously also because the game industry in and of itself is so massive now. I saw a comparison. The video games make more money than the movie industry, than the music industry nowadays. So obviously you have more of those big influences as well that you've seen in the movie and music industry decades ago. So in a way, it's just a natural progression. Like I said, there are obviously other that fans can turn to that do differently. And I think that is really there. We as customers and consumers have to make the choice to put our money where we belong, where we think it belongs, and not then support the practices that we don't want to support.
Yeah.
I think that's easier said than done, though, because we are such a small part of the majority of gamers, because I don't know if y'all saw the top 20 best-selling video games from 2010 to 2019. And so the top, well, we'll just go through the top 10, okay? Number 1, Grand Theft Auto 5. Number 2, Call of Duty Black Ops. Number 3, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Number 4, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Number 5, Call of Duty Black Ops 3. Number 6, Call of Duty Ghosts. Number 7, Red Dead Redemption 2. Number 8, Call of Duty World War 2. Number 9, Call of Duty Black Ops 4. And then number 10, Minecraft.
I didn't even know half of these Call of Duty games.
And I mean, there were 11 and 12 are also Call of Duty games. So that just shows you how massive EA and Activision and Activision is for as much as we complain and cry about it, they're still just making massive amounts of money, and that kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you guys want to talk about news-wise?
Can't think of anything.
There's been all the rumors about when the PS5 reveal is going to be.
Yeah, hopefully sometime in February. They haven't said anything though.
No, they haven't said anything official. Though, I mean, there was even rumors it was meant to happen today, but obviously that's not the case because I think it would have happened by now. But I'm definitely
I think
hoping
they
it's
would
sooner
have
in
to give.
February. Rather
Yeah,
than
I
later.
think
Well, I
they
have
would.
something to reveal. Let me just.
Yeah,
Oh,
they would.
here it is, the PS5 reveal.
They would have to give like a little bit of advance. I think would
Yeah.
they would want to give for journalists and things like that.
Well, I'm betting that journalists already know when it is, but they can't talk about it yet because they'll be going to the event and preparing for that. But
Maybe so. Yeah.
because I'm pretty sure I
Well,
saw
I
a
guess
couple
we would
tweets
at
about.
least hear like a couple of hours before, so we can turn into the live stream of the revelation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a couple kind of journalists tweet about the fact that this time when the PS4 was about to get announced, kind of end of January was when journalists started to get emails about when the event would be before the public knew. So I wouldn't be surprised if similar is happening right now for the PS5 reveal.
Yeah, hopefully we hear something soon. I mean, I want to say I'm excited, but honestly, I'm not like super hyped to hear about the PS4. I think I'm just more excited to hear about the
PS4.
games. Or sorry, PS5.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the same. Like, I don't really like. It will be nice to find out how it looks like, and I guess a few more details about than the eventual release or some of its features. But other than that, it's like, yeah, I mean, it will be better than the PS4, we assume, and then everything else is really depending on games to play. Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good the console is if the game's bad.
Yeah, I just want to hear
We're
about the
not there.
games. What else? Anything else news-wise?
I'm not sure.
Well, let's see. I've got a couple of questions. I answered this one last week, but I'm curious about you guys. What your answer would be? This is from Vermont. She asked, "Is there a game where you guys were sure you would not like, but in the end turned out to be way more fun than you thought?"
I mean, I think a good recent example would be Final Fantasy 14. I tried it a couple times before and wanted to get into it, but never really liked it. And so the third time I was kind of just starting it up because I had the itch for an MMO, but kind of knew I wouldn't like it because I tried it before, but then ended up for some reason getting into it quite a lot. And then I think my other one could be Monster Hunter World. It was like the first Monster Hunter game I'd even properly looked into or wanted to buy and try. And so, sure, I was interested, but I was pretty sure I wasn't going to like it. And then 100+ hours later, I had a lot of fun with it.
I thought about it, and for me, one game recently, the Final Fantasy VIII remake or remastered, because I never played any of the Final Fantasy, never really was interested in them, and when the remastered came out, I was like, oh, let's check it out, and I really had a good time with it. So that's certainly up there. But I think the biggest one for me is the Yakuza series. I was never interested in it. I heard about it, of course, but it was for me like, okay, like some kind of brawling type of game, not really my type. And then I got Yakuza 0 recommended to me and started it, and now Yakuza 0 is probably my second favorite game of all time. So
Wow.
it really blew me away.
Did you feel like Yakuza 0 was a really slow start?
It was a little bit of a slow start, yes, but I think it's also just the style of that franchise that it gives you the space to take your time, and a lot of it is just messing around. The enjoyment of it is the mix between the very serious and very well crafted, very cinematic main story, and then you have the most wacky shit imaginable in the side quests. So you can really pick and choose what you feel like. Do you want to do wacky things? Do you want to have a laugh? Do crazy side quests? Do mini games? You can do that for days. But if you then want a very high level, very well crafted main storyline with excellent twists that are beautifully written, then you just play the main story, and it will provide just that.
Yeah, I tried getting into Yakuza 0, and I admit I didn't play much of it, but I just couldn't really get into it. And maybe I need to go back because, like you said, I didn't think I was going to be into kind of the beat 'em up type gameplay. But I've just heard so many good things about it. So maybe I need to
took
retry it.
me a couple of streams to like really get into it. I the first stream and it was fun, but I went into it with the expectation like, oh, this probably will be fun enough for like a couple of streams, so up to 10 hours maybe, and then I kind of lose interest in it and it becomes stale. But by that point it really ramped up the main story and provided the mentioned twists and just story teasers that then really captured my interest, that at that point I needed to continue to find.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I think I said this last week, but I think I mentioned Persona 5 is definitely one, and then Bayonetta as well. Both of those games I just did not think I was going to like at all, but just ended up absolutely falling in love, especially Bayonetta. I think that's probably the most that I went from like thinking, oh, I'm going to hate this game. It's going to be just like this, just this, just button mashy game to just absolutely loving that game.
Another one I can think of for me is Hollow Knight. I expected it more to be a platformer, and I'm not really too much into platformers, but then that it actually has more of a Souls mix into it. I really enjoyed it, and I didn't play it for a while because I should probably not mine, and then I started it and really noticed what the game is actually about and had a great time with it.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I think that was similar for me. I didn't think that I was going to like that game because I've never really been into kind of 2D platforming type games. Never been very good at them, but I fell in love with Hollow Knight. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
We got one more question. If you could have one power from any video game character, what would it be?
Quick save? Does that count?
That's a good one.
It's more of a game mechanic, though, right?
Yeah.
I thought
I think I will go with the Yakuza, gaining XP by eating. I would like
Gaining what by eating?
XP by eating.
Oh, that would be nice.
I think, the barber in GTA San Andreas who can just change your character to have a beard instantly or have a certain hairstyle instantly?
Yeah.
I think I'd want his power so I can just have perfect hair like all the time.
And then you could just like change your appearance like just whenever you want. Just like get a different hairstyle, and that'd be pretty cool.
Like if I wanted a really big bushy beard, I could, and then if I wanted like the biggest mustache ever, I could. Just change things up constantly,
I would want to be able to. I don't want to be able to dive into a bale of hay like Assassin's Creed.
can do that. It's just different.
Ooh, biotics. That would be really cool. Basically, anything in the Mass Effect universe would be really cool. Yeah, well, guys, I think that's going to do it for us. Anybody else have anything you want to talk about or throw out?
I don't think so, no.
No.
Well, I just want to thank Akko, TheAkosombo, for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Akko.
Everyone, please go and check out Akko's channels. I'm posting them in the chat here. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'd love to have you on again sometime.
I would love to. Thank you for having me. I had a great time. Thank you for tolerating so long.
Absolutely.
It's all good.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone else for joining us. The Sands of Time from Prince of Persia. That would be a really cool power to turn back the Sands of Time. Or just time travel in general. We do this podcast every Friday at 2 p.m. Central Time. That is 9 p.m. Central European Time and 8 p.m. UK time. So yeah, thank you guys so much. We'll be back next week, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.